There's nothing cooler than buying an older Ducati with zero consideration for every red flag. Sure, you could do the sensible thing and buy a Japanese supersport like everyone else says you should, or you could buy a Ducati 848 and experience the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, a true Italian love affair. The 848 was produced alongside the larger 1098, in which they share the same frame and bodywork. When this bike debuted in 2007, it used a brand new 849cc L-twin engine that was making 123 horsepower and 66 foot-pounds of torque. That's why I said the new Panigale V2 is kind of like a classic-style 848, very similar. This bike was designed by Italian designer Gianandrea Fabbro, and it exudes classic Ducati style. Some of the best looking sport bikes hit the scenes in the mid-2000s, and this generation Ducati is up there with the best of them. It has all the fixtures of beautiful classic Ducati. It has the trellis frame, undertail exhaust, single-sided swing arm, and before Ducati was slaying with their V4 engines, the 90-degree Desmo L-twin was the cream of the crop in their flagship superbikes and the smaller supersports as well. The ample torque spread and grumbly exhaust tone are totally unmatched and make it definitely one of the coolest bikes you can ride. Aside from questionable reliability, a mid-2000s Ducati like an 848 has to contend with cam belt services and Desmo valve checks with adjustments, but it has undeniable charm and charisma. When you could have any Japanese sport bike that is cheaper, easier to maintain, and oftentimes more powerful, but you still choose an older Ducati, you've clearly got a different set of priorities. Alright, so the Indian FTR 1200 is a bike that doesn't make a ton of sense by most metrics. It's not really a true sporty naked bike. It's a far stretch from a scrambler despite its flat tractor design. It's not really a cruiser because it doesn't ride like one, but it does have a V-twin engine. But despite all of that, it is a cool bike in about every single way. And every time I hear that somebody rides an FTR 1200, I always think, oh, nice. Great choice. It's almost cooler because it adheres to pretty few standards or expectations. The liquid-cooled 1203cc V-twin makes 120 horsepower and 87 foot-pounds of torque, making it pretty rowdy, but the best part about it is the original generation had a 150 section rear tire with like no grip, so it slides everywhere. You can drift this bike all day long. It's punchy and characterful and feels novel and exciting in a lot of ways. I really fell in love with this thing when we had it as a giveaway bike a few years ago. It's a lot of fun. The bike weighs in at over 500 pounds, which definitely sets it apart from the new category of svelte naked bikes, but it carries its weight in a way that feels appropriate, and it's definitely one of the coolest bikes you can get. It's got kind of a motard-esque stance with wide bars and low foot pegs, and the bike begs you to break the rear end and muscle it around. This bike has Brembo brakes and fully adjustable suspension, but the base models and earlier models don't use a ton of tech besides ABS, which just contributes to that raw feeling of this bike. It really has like a hopped up muscle car feel to it. The higher end trim levels do have more tech and ride modes and TC, but I don't really think it's worth it. The FTR 1200 is the bike for a cruiser guy who just wants more power and to be able to have a little bit more fun on their bike. Everyone who was chomping at the bit for Harley-Davidson Bronx before it got scrapped should just get an FTR if they want a sporty American-made naked bike that has a V-twin character that sets itself apart from the standard slew of naked bikes on the market. Now, some bikes are so cool they pull on your heartstrings despite certain shortcomings on the spec sheet. For the Triumph Rocket 3, the spec sheet doesn't fall short. Instead, it is literally bursting at the seams. The Rocket 3 uses the largest production motorcycle engine ever made, coming in at a massive 2,458 cc's. That's a 2.5-liter engine for all you car drivers, meaning it is bigger than many modest commuter cars on the road. It actually has a larger engine than my first car in high school had. I had a 2-liter Mazda 3. That's crazy. And unlike a big bloated V-twin from Harley-Davidson, who's known for making absurdly large engines in their own right, the Rocket 3 actually makes some serious power as well. This Herculean 3-cylinder makes 180 horsepower and an astonishing 168 foot-pounds of torque. Those are Turbo Hayabusa levels of torque. It is, by almost every metric, a motorcycle no one on earth needs to own. Brand new, they cost around $25,000. They make an insane amount of power, and they weigh over 700 pounds. You know, for a motorcycle oozing in excess, it really is more American than it is British, but yep, there it is. Triumph made the most American motorcycle ever, I guess. But the Rocket 3, despite its impracticality or exorbitance, is incredibly cool. It's a bike that turns heads no matter where you go, and other riders will bow before its prowess, and non-riders will display shock and awe when their gaze lands on the car engine slung between your knees. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you see 3 gigantic exhaust headers sticking out in a longitudinal direction on the motorcycle that something's quite special with that thing. KTM stopped making street-legal superbikes because the CEO said they were irresponsible for the street. Well, I also think being $3 billion in debt is pretty irresponsible, KTM, but you don't see me talking about that. But for that reason alone, the KTM 1190 RC8 is a super cool bike. It's irresponsible, it's impractical, and it is amazing. Given the current state of KTM, maybe this is even a bike of KTM's former glory days. The KTM 1190 RC8 was a unique addition to the superbike scene when it debuted in 2008. Unlike the round, smooth lines of sport bikes at the time, it was aggressive and angular and exuded maximalist KTM design. By 2009, the bike was making 173 horsepower and 90 foot-pounds of torque from the 1195cc V-twin engine. It really makes me consider the fact that in the late 2000s, there was at least 3 different hopped-up V-twin superbikes. You had the RC8, you had the Ducati 1198, or was it the 1098 by that time? Probably the 1098. And then you also had the Buell, the EBR. It'd bring back V-twin superbikes. So the RC8 was a bike that had very few electronic rider aids, making it very raw and tactile from the riding experience to reward skill as much as it does bravery. In a world where Japanese sport bikes are a dime a dozen, not without good reason of course, a bike like the KTM RC8 makes a statement. It's a bike that despite every limitation working against it, it still managed to secure diehard fans and loyalists because of its unparalleled attitude and riding experience. It's a bike that just did its own thing. It toes a fine line between being super cool looking and monstrously hideous, depending on the lighting and the strength of your glasses prescription. Because of its uniqueness in the class, its complete disregard for styling standards at the time, and its purposeful inception with no concessions made, it is certainly a cool motorcycle. The RC8 only wants one thing, and it is disgusting.
Triumph calls this color Cosmic Yellow on the Street Triple 765 RS, and I'd like to think it's cosmic because when you find out that you've won this motorcycle on Yamanube.co, you're going to ascend to the heavens and be in a heaven-like cosmic state of existence as this thing wheels itself into your driveway because you won it on Yamanube.co. Become a member on the website. Get your chances locked and loaded. You'll join our Discord, get access to the newsletter. But if that doesn't sound appealing, pick up a hat, a t-shirt, a hoodie. We sell all kinds of great stuff on the website. Every dollar you spend will not only support the show, but will also get you entered to win, subject to an amazing multiplier. Get entered to win this bike. Don't sleep on it.
By most metrics that we use to quantify motorcycles, the Harley-Davidson Sportster sucks. It's heavy, slow, and has a woefully pathetic suspension from stock. It is a motorcycle that handles a corner with the finesse of a drunk elephant, but despite this, it is indisputably cool. I really think so anyways. The Sportster is a motorcycle that's permeated American culture while being simultaneously panned by sport bike riders and big Harley riders alike. It exists in practically its own niche, with maybe only the Triumph Bonneville being a motorcycle that comes close to rivaling its heritage and panache. But really, I love the fact that Harley guys hate it and sport bike guys hate it. That's so cool. But also, the Bonneville is too good of a motorcycle to be as cool as the Sportster. The Bonneville is a modern classic, having been built and revamped and redesigned to mirror the original platform while offering a modern riding experience, whereas the Sportster is just a classic through and through, with the core mechanical elements being unchanged since the 80s. The Sportster was the last bike sold by Harley to still use the Evo V-twin engine all the way through the early 2020s. This engine design dates back to the 80s, and in the motor company's larger models, it's been replaced 3 times over, but not in the Sportster. The Evo engine's potato single crank pin air-cooled V-twin rumble is probably one of the most unique and characterful engines that's still produced in the modern era. It's not a 270-degree crank parallel twin that kind of just mimics a V-twin. It's not a hopped-up liquid-cooled V-twin that used in the Indian Scout. It's just a straight-up low-compression dinosaur. And really in the modern era where I've been riding so many different parallel twin 270-degree crank engines, it's still such a treat to jump on an actual V-twin, and jumping on this old-school dinosaur V-twin is even better. Aside from the engine, the Sportster has an iconic design. It's been copied so many times. It's raw, stripped back, and minimalistic. They've been sold in so many different trims over the years, and have been built and customized by thousands of riders to become uniquely different machines. But they're all just so classically cool. The Sportster isn't fast, it isn't expensive, and it's certainly not rare, but it's lovable, recognizable, and timeless. We all recognize the Ducati 916 as one of the most aesthetically pleasing motorcycles ever created, but Massimo Tamburini's second most famous design, the MV Agusta F4, is a close second. Owning an MV Agusta is almost cooler than owning a Ducati in a lot of ways. If you own an MV Agusta, it typically means you're either rich, stupid, or a combination of both. But every once in a while, a cool guy buys an MV Agusta purely for the aesthetics, allure, and brand cachet. This bike may spend all of its time parked in the garage, patiently waiting for you to pull the cover off every few months when you have some friends over and you want to show it off. Otherwise, you may try to ride it, but something's gonna break, and then it's gonna spend more time sitting in a dealership while they wait for parts to come in. But regardless, if you own an MV Agusta F4, you own a piece of art and a fixture of motorcycle design, and that's pretty cool. This bike first came out in 1999 when it first used a 749cc 4-cylinder engine before being bumped up to 998 in 2004. This engine was actually derived from an early 90s Ferrari Formula 1 engine, so that's a fun bit of trivia if you own one of these. The F4 series debuted with the F4 750 Oro, which is as eye-catching as it ever was. The Oro had a bespoke Tamburini-esque design language with the smooth bodywork, undertail exhaust, and the single-sided swing arm. All painted parts were made of carbon fiber, and many of the gold metal parts, such as the wheels and swing arm, were made of magnesium. This meant that the 750 Oro was super light with a dry weight of under 400 pounds. The F4 was sold all the way through 2018 with a displacement of 998cc, so there's plenty of models in the first or second generation that will each break your heart in their own unique way. And also, look at the tailpipes. Oh, that's so cool. I've long praised the Svartpilen 401 as an awesome beginner bike, and for 4 short years, Husqvarna sold the Svartpilen 701. This bike is strange to say the least. The Svartpilen already had super unique styling elements that made it look unlike any other bike on the market. It's like a weird cyberpunk concept motorcycle, and it's super distinct and catches a lot of attention. It is also unique with its use of a 693cc single-cylinder engine pulled from the old KTM Duke 690 and also used in the KTM and Husky Enduro and Supermoto bikes. Using a big single-cylinder engine in a street bike definitely has its limitations, making 74 horsepower, but it also lends itself to a fun and novel experience. It's light, pokey, and agile, and produces a usable and enjoyable amount of power. The Svartpilen 701 had a fair share of reliability issues and recalls in its short production run, but that isn't of consideration for a video like this. The Svartpilen 701 is a cool bike that is kind of unsure of what it is. It's certainly not a supermoto, it's not a typical naked bike, it's not a scrambler. It's quirky, weird, and one-of-one motorcycle that, despite its shortcomings, definitely retains a cool factor. And the new Svartpilen 801 is just a Duke 790, so we all know we can't trust it. So how likely are you to make concessions when it comes to specs in order to get a bike that is truly cool? Or are you just a Honda rider on some touring bike? Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. At the very least, I hope you enjoyed seeing some oh-so-pretty machines today. If you enjoyed today's video and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to do so. We have a bunch of new content coming to the channel in 2025. New videos, new track content, new giveaway bikes, stunt groms, Gixxer 600 track builds, a new rider series. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be a big year. Fact. The first feature-length animated film was released in Argentina in 1917. It was a political satire called El Apostol, and it was made of 58,000 images displayed at 14 frames per second. Goodbye.
All right, everybody, this video is over. There's no more to watch on this beautiful video between me and you, but this Triumph Street Triple 765 RS is available on yammynoob.co as a giveaway bike. Hit that link while you're waiting for the next video to load. Become a member. It'll take you as easy as 1, 2, 3, and then you're signed up to win. How cool is that? Papa Yam's giving away 54 bikes. You could be the next one.